19, this is problem 3.4.29, and we are working with grouped data in this problem. And this isn't quite as easy or as quick to solve in Excel because we aren't able to use just quick average or standard deviation functions to come up with the mean and the standard deviation of a group data set. But the good thing about using Excel is that you can organize the steps that you'll need to solve each question and hopefully prevent some mistakes that could be made if you're working it out by hand with pencil and paper. So I've copied the data set over to Excel, but I added this text box here that shows just kind of, again, a quick formula for the mean and a quick formula for the standard deviation. The numerator and the denominators here also are the sums. There should be technically a sigma symbol here, just like there is for standard deviation in the numerator and denominator of that formula. But anyway, it's really just here as a quick reminder of what the long manual formulas are for these two solutions. So to get started, we can work on the mean first. And first thing we need to do is calculate the midpoint of the value. So 0 to 2, the midpoint is 1. The midpoint of 2 and 4 is 3. Midpoint of 4 and 6 is 5, and 6 to 8, the midpoint is 7. So we've got the midpoints there. The next step we'll need to do is multiply the midpoint times the frequency. So take again another look at the equation here. What we're doing is adding up all of the products of the midpoint, which is the x in the formula, and the frequency, which is the f in the formula. So this will be our x times f. So we're going to do equals, and x again is the midpoint. Multiplication is the star sign above the number 8. And the frequency is here. And we're just going to copy that formula down all the way so it'll automatically calculate all of them for us. And we'll go ahead and sum these up because we are going to need the sum for the numerator when we're calculating the mean. So I'm going to do a sum function and select the target cells there. And we will also need a sum of the frequencies, as you can see here, for the denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here and sum these up. Okay. And the last step for calculating the mean would be to do that division operation. So we're going to take the sum of all the the midpoints and frequencies that we calculated for the numerator, and we're going to divide that by the sum of all the frequencies as the denominator. Okay, and that comes up with 5.038, and we do want 3 decimal places here, so the mean of this grouped sample is 5.038. Okay, so the next part of the question is to calculate the standard deviation. And so again, we're not able to use the stdev function in Excel because that's really just when we're working with historical data. It doesn't require any frequencies or probabilities. In the financial management course, you'll calculate oftentimes standard deviation in this same way because you'll be working with probabilities associated with each potential or estimated return on an investment. So you'll do some that are working with historical returns like we've done before in previous problems in this homework assignment. But again, this is a little bit more complex way of calculating standard deviation when we have a frequency, or in the financial management terms, a probability associated with the return. So for standard deviation, what we'll need to do is take the difference between each observation here, which is the midpoint x, and subtract the x bar, which is the mean that we calculated here, the 5.038. So in this column here, we're going to do basically the midpoint x, and I'll just say MP for midpoint. I'm going to subtract the mean, which is x bar. So we're going to do equals the midpoint. In this case it was 1, and we're going to subtract the mean that we calculated down here. And I'm going to go ahead and lock in, using the dollar signs, that mean, so that when I copy the formula down, there we go. So dollar signs in between the column letter C there. And what that does is lock in the value of the mean that we calculated, so that when I copy the formula down, it's always going to reference, make sure that was done correctly, it's always going to reference the correct cell here, C8 in each formula. You can see there it's copying the formula, or the midpoint, the correct midpoint, as we go down, changing the midpoint cell reference, but keeping that same C8 reference to the mean that we calculated. Okay, then the next step is we need to square that result and multiply it times the frequency. So we're going to, we've done this part here, we've calculated the difference between the midpoint and the mean, and that next we need to square it and then multiply it times the frequency. So we're just working on the numerator still here. Okay, so I'm just going to title this as SQ, because we're going to square, and then times the frequency. So we square by, so I'm going to use a parentheses here. Select the cell, and then we use the caret symbol above the number 6, and put a 2 for squaring, since we are squaring the figure, not taking it to the power of 3 or 4 or any other number. And close that off in the parentheses to make sure that operation is performed first. And then I'm going to multiply times that frequency. And the frequency was back here in column B. Okay, and then same thing, I'm going to go ahead and copy that formula down to the other observations. And so what we have there is essentially the numerator, and what we need to do now is work on the denominator. So the denominator is the sum of the frequencies minus 1. Actually, we'll go ahead and sum these up first. So again, for the numerator, we're going to sum up these calculations that we did here with the squaring, multiplying times the frequency. So that's our numerator there as it stands, and we'll adjust this a little bit. So the denominator is the sum of the frequencies minus 1. So we have the sum of the frequencies here. So this is just sum of frequencies minus 1. Okay, and the next step is we need to actually do the division operation here. So we're going to take the numerator divided by the denominator. Okay, and then we do technically have one more step that is not visualized in the formula here, which is to take the square root of the entire thing. So the square root of the entire operation here. So to do that, we do equals SQRT, select the figure that we want to take the square root of, and that is our answer there. So we have 2.25, 3 decimal places, will be 2.253. So again, a much more complex way of calculating mean and standard deviation for this type of a problem, but Excel can help you organize your steps, and by using functions and formulas, it'll help you to hopefully minimize any mistakes that you might otherwise make trying to calculate this all out manually with pen and paper.